Hey there, scary story fanatics! Welcome back to a very special upload of Cleaving Thought from Bone, nestled snugly into the coffin of night 6 of this scarathon. So, if you're up for some tricks, as well as some treats, come join us for this little pumpkin-spiced story, a Halloween tale.
Obey the rules of Halloween. For he is ancient and unseen. For he is the Pumpkin Lord, for he comes in many forms. For the worlds are blended on this night. Break the rules and surely die. The room was dark, almost black. Sam woke up with a splitting headache. He held his head in his hands as he sat up.
What the hell happened?
Sam asked himself, still in a daze, like he had a hangover.
Did I really drink that much?
He thought to himself. But it was then that Sam realized that he was not in his bedroom. Instead of waking up in his bed, Sam woke up to a nearly pitch-black room. The space was filled with cobwebs and broken boards, all scattered about. Here and there you could see evidence of the animals that once resided here, their feces, and their remains still littered the floor around Sam. Sam stumbled to his feet.
What the hell? Where am I?
He asked himself.
Hello?
Sam asked into the darkness. No one answered.
Is anybody there? Where am I?
He continued to ask, but still no answer. Sam stumbled out into the hallway, a hallway that had 5 more doors. The corridor was fairly long, with 4 doors spaced equally between each other on the sides, including the door that Sam had just come from. There was also a door at either end of the hallway. Each of the doors was a long faded white paint that had yellowed and peeled with age. The hallway was a light gray color, a color like dull metal.
Hello? Help me!
Sam heard a woman screaming from one of the rooms across the hall.
Hello?
Sam replied.
Hello? Where am I? What am I doing here?
The woman screamed.
I don't know. I just woke up here.
Sam replied to her as he reached for the door and opened it. The door swung open with a slow creak against the floorboards. Inside the room, there was only a desk. A small school desk with a tiny chair attached to it stood in the direct center of the dimly lit room. Beside the desk stood a woman of average height. She appeared to be of Asian descent. She had long, black hair that was covered in spiderwebs and dust.
What happened?
Sam asked the woman.
I don't know.
The woman replied.
I just woke up here.
She barked at Sam in a bit of a panic.
I wish I could tell you what's going on, but I'm as clueless as you are.
Sam told the terrified woman.
I'm sorry. I'm just not used to waking up in strange places with strange men.
The woman joked, her mood lightening a bit. Sam chuckled.
I'm Sam. Now I'm not such a strange man.
Sam introduced himself.
I'm Jamie.
The girl informed him.
Hi, Jamie. Nice to meet you. Sorry it's not under better circumstances.
Sam joked.
Let's have a look around,
Jamie said, before grabbing onto Sam's hand and walking with him out into the hallway with 6 doors. There were now 2 open doors and 4 closed ones. From within the room next to where Jamie had woken up, the 2 of them could hear sobbing. They opened the door to find a young man of about 17 or 18 years old. He was curled up in the corner of the room, sobbing with fear, but as soon as he noticed them, he regained his composure and began to act tough, like he had not been crying. By now, The introduction scenario was old news, and Jamie and Sam quickly explained the situation to the young man before they introduced themselves.
I'm Dean,
the boy replied to them. Dean was a young man with dark-colored hair that was cut into a military crew cut. He had the tough guy, military brat aura to him as well. The three of them were soon joined by two more people, a young African-American man in his 20s and a middle-aged, balding, white, business-type man. They introduced themselves as Billy and Tom. They were all stuck in the same situation together, all trapped in a strange house with no way out. There were 5 of them, but there were 6 doors.
Maybe the wacko who put us here is behind that door,
Sam thought to himself. Jamie and Tom both recalled the remaining door before Sam could mention it. Then, suddenly, everyone was in a rush to open the unopened door. The group hurried down the hallway and found that one of the doorways on the end of the hall was still closed. They quickly opened the door, but inside, they did not find their captor, nor did they find an escape. Instead, they found a large room with the paint peeling from the walls. The room was dark just like the others, nearly black aside from the flickering light of a candle within the center of the room. A candle within a jack-o'-lantern, carved with a twisted and menacing grin. The jack-o'-lantern sat upon an old wooden table, and in front of the carved pumpkin laid an old and yellowed piece of paper. Billy picked up the paper and began to read what it said.
Obey the rules of Halloween, for he is ancient and unseen, for he is the Pumpkin Lord, for he comes in many forms, for the worlds are blended on this night. Break the rules and surely die. What's more important is...
Rules? What rules? Halloween has rules?
Tom asked in an aggravated tone.
the Pumpkin Lord. This guy's nuts.
Dean said in a condescending fashion.
What's more important is, does anyone remember how we got here?
Billy asked.
I do.
Jamie said.
Well, spill it!
Tom replied to her.
He put us here.
She replied.
Who?
Dean asked.
Okay, I'd just come home from work. The sun was nearly set and the children had already started trick-or-treating. And I remember a few kids coming to my door. There was a girl that was dressed in a homemade witch costume, a kid dressed in black that had bones drawn onto him with what was obviously a whiteout pen and a skull painted on his face, making him like a cheap skeleton, and then there was that kid dressed up as the typical ghost with a sheet over his head, and I remembered thinking that their parents must be poor, and I almost felt bad that I had nothing to give them, but, I was busy and had a frustrating day, so I made them leave. I had no candy to give them, and all I had in my purse were 20s, and they definitely weren't getting those.
Jamie began.
But then, after the kids left, that's when things started to change. The lights were flickering, and I felt like someone else was in the house with me. I felt like I wasn't alone. Then I heard the doorbell ring again, and this time it was a tall man. He wore this red masquerade mask with a single black feather sticking out from it. And he was clad in black robe that had red inside, the same blood color as his mask. I asked him, "Aren't you a little old to be trick-or-treating?" And he just stood there and stared at me. His bright blue eyes pierced into me. I said, "I don't have any candy, sorry," and I closed the door and locked it because, the guy creeped me out. And then it was late and all the kids had stopped trick-or-treating and I was getting ready for bed, and I felt like someone was staring at me. It was the same way I felt when that man was staring at me. I kept seeing him in my mind. I even thought I actually saw him a few times. Once in the reflection of the window when I was doing dishes, then again in the bathroom mirror when I was getting dressed. I kept seeing him pop up around the house, but when I looked again, he was always gone. I think it was about midnight when I heard my doorbell again. I just laid in bed, like, waiting for the annoying kid to go away, but he didn't. It rang again and again. So I got up, and I was pissed, determined to find the culprit. I opened the door, ready to yell at some poor kid, and he lunged at me, the man in the crimson mask. I jumped back, and I fell to the ground. I tried to scream, but I had the wind knocked out of me and was just struggling to take a breath. I kicked and clawed at him, but it didn't help. But I did manage to knock the mask off and see his face. And behind the mask, he was like a bat. He had this wrinkled face and pointed ears beneath his hair. I saw him open his mouth, slowly, wider and wider. His jaw must have come unhinged because he opened his mouth wider than any man could. Then I saw his upper lip curl outward, and he had these yellow, sharp teeth, canine teeth, unfolding from the roof of his mouth. It was kind of like fangs on a snake before it strikes. The last thing I remember is his breath on my neck. And then I woke up here.
Jamie finished her story.
What? Are you crazy? With a crazy story like that, you were probably the whack job that put us out here.
Tom blurted at her.
Oh, yeah? Then how the hell did you get here, huh?
Jamie asked Tom, offended by the accusation.
I'll gladly tell you. It ain't no crazy nonsense like vampires.
Tom stated, before beginning his story.
It was a long day at the office, and I had just gotten home. It was already pretty late, probably 10 or 11. The candy bowl I left out for the little suckers was empty, and I didn't feel like bringing it in, so I left it outside. I was nestled in a bed when I heard a smash of broken glass coming from somewhere inside the house. I jumped up, grabbed my ball bat from beside my bed, and ran downstairs. There I found the metal bowl that I have left out for the kids. It was laying in a pile of broken glass in front of a broken window. Then to the right of that window I found my front door wide open. The wind blowing leaves into my house. Someone had used my own candy bowl to break into my house. Then I seen a guy walk out of the living room. He was dressed in black and was wearing a skeleton mask. Then he was joined by another guy that came in from outside. He was also dressed in black and wore a clown mask. I was terrified and readied myself to fight these two punks. But I'm not as young as I used to be. The two guys rushed me, tackled me to the ground, knocking the bat out of my hands. I struggled and kicked against them, but they were too much for me. I felt a pain in the back of my head, and then I woke up with a freaking headache. Those crazies kidnapped us and put us here.
Tom finished his story.
That's a more believable story than vampires.
He added.
You sure that vampire wasn't something else?
Billy asked.
Something else like what?
Jamie inquired.
I don't know.
Billy replied.
What do you mean?
Sam asked Billy.
I like to cause a little trouble on Halloween. You know, like throwing eggs at people's houses and putting toilet paper in trees. Nothing too serious. Occasionally, I would light a bag of dog poop on fire and put it on someone's doorstep for them to get a nasty surprise when they stomped it out. Anyway, I had been walking around town causing a bit of trouble when I came across this house. It was a big mansion and it was all dark inside. But outside there were a few dozen pumpkins, all carved in different ways, some with smiles, some with frowns, many with evil faces, and others were carved with scenes like bats or ghosts. So since I'm a troublemaker, I decided to break a few of them. Well, a few turned into nearly all of them. I only stopped when I saw a kid inside watching me. He looked hurt that I was breaking his pumpkins, so I felt bad about it and took off. I'm not completely heartless. I made it a few blocks down the road, and I found myself by the park at the edge of the woods. I kept hearing rustling in the bushes, but I shrugged it off as a raccoon or something. But it wasn't. I saw a man come out of the bushes. He was completely naked, so I was like, "What the hell, buddy?" But he didn't look all right. He looked sick. He was pale and sweaty. But then I saw him begin to change. I watched his fingers grow longer and split open to a wolf's paws. He growled at me and showed his teeth. Then I watched his teeth get pushed out by longer fangs. I watched them fall to the ground as his back began to arch and crack. I stood there, frozen in terror as the man's face began to stretch out into a wolf's snout. The guy went through a painful transformation. He changed from a man into a large black wolf. Then he lunged at me and clawed and bit at me. I felt him rip my throat out. I felt it. But I have no cuts. I'm fine. How can that be possible?
Billy finished.
Werewolves? First vampires, now werewolves? I'm officially convinced that I am stuck in the crazy house.
Tom commented.
That is pretty crazy. What kind of drugs you guys been taking?
Dean asked them.
I don't do drugs. Been sober for 4.5 years.
Billy said.
Yeah, right. With a story like that, you've been dropping acid or something.
Dean said.
Nope. Completely clean.
Billy said, a bit annoyed with Dean.
Shrooms? Been, falling down the rabbit hole, huh?
Dean continued.
Dude, I don't do drugs. I just like to cause a little trouble, because it reminds me of better days. I saw what I saw. I'm not high.
Billy finished before walking away from Dean.
Right, if you think we're so crazy, explain to us how you got here.
Jamie said to Dean.
Gladly.
Dean said.
I was out with a couple friends. We'd had a few drinks, smoked a little chronic, like usual. We'd gone around the neighborhood, caused some trouble just like this guy.
Dean said, pointing to Billy.
We egged some houses, stole some candy from some kids, TP'd houses, you know, the usual Halloween mischief. Got yelled at by pissed off parents, all butthurt because their kids can't stick up for themselves, so they go crying to mommy and daddy. It was late, probably around midnight, when we decided to go to the cemetery and mess around. We drank and partied around the graves while we kept warm by a fire that we started in one of the metal trash cans we stole from a store nearby. We laughed and joked for a while before we started to hear noises, like crying from the woods behind the graveyard. We also heard twigs snapping and growling. I swear I've seen a few shadows moving around in the woods too, like people walking around behind the trees. Then we started to hear voices. They started out whispering, then they got louder and louder until we could nearly hear full conversations in the woods. But it was so muffled by the trees and the wind that we still couldn't make out what they were saying. We weren't scared or nothing. We just thought the cops were there looking for us, so we took off out of there and headed back to the car. We were on our way home when the car started acting funny. The engine started to make weird noises and the radio was flipping around the stations by itself. My friend was joking around saying that the car wasn't responding. At least, I thought he was joking. But the car started to swerve around. Then we heard the voices from the cemetery again. This time they were coming from the radio. That was the last thing I heard before my friend's piece of crap car swerved off the road and hit a tree. Then I woke up, found myself in this dump with you whack jobs. No vampires, no werewolves, no masked men, just car trouble.
Dean explained his story. It then came Sam's turn to tell his tale.
So, what are you in for?
Jamie joked to Sam.
I don't like Halloween that much, but my sister loves it.
Sam began.
You don't like Halloween? How can you not like Halloween?
Dean asked.
I don't know. I just don't. I see it as just another corporate inflated holiday to sell stuff.
Sam said.
I live with my sister, and every year she puts up Halloween decorations, and every year I pull them down when the night is through. I finished tearing down all the decorations and went to go inside, when I saw a shadow moving out of the corner of my eye. I turned to look at it, but I didn't see anything. Just darkness and decorations in my neighbor's yard. I lugged all the crap to the deck and dropped it there to pick it up in the morning. I was too tired to deal with that garbage right then. Inside, I sat down in my chair and grabbed the remote to click on the TV. But before I pressed the button, I looked at my reflection within the TV. I could see myself, but I could also see a man standing behind me. At least, I think it was a man. It was the shape of a man, but it was all black. He had no features, just darkness standing there behind me. I quickly turned and glanced over my shoulder, but I saw nothing. Just my kitchen behind me. Then I started to hear breathing. First it sounded like it was coming from down the hallway to my right, but then it got closer. Suddenly it sounded like it was in the room with me. Then by the arm of my chair. Then right by my ear. It was so close I could actually feel the hot air against my face. However, I couldn't see anything. I felt the breathing, but there was no source it could have been coming from. I was so terrified that my fingers dug into the arms of my chair and my nails left marks in the wood. I pushed myself back against the chair and held my breath as I sat there and waited for it to stop. Then, as suddenly as it started, the raspy breathing stopped again, and all was silent. I had dropped the remote control onto my lap and was still gripping the arms of the chair. I wondered what was going on, what was happening, what had I seen, what did I hear? The TV then flicked on by itself, and there was only static on the screen. I could hear the humming and the buzzing of the static, but then I also heard voices in the static. I didn't know what they said, but I knew they were there. Then I seen him again. The Shadow Man. He was standing inside my bedroom, which was on the left side of the hallway that was to my right. I watched him as he poked his head out and glared at me. I could not see his eyes. I only saw black, but I could feel his eyes on me. I could feel him watching me. Then he was gone again. All of this happened in a matter of minutes. I felt a peacefulness again, but that wasn't long-lasting. After I'd searched the house to be sure there was not an actual burglar, I sat down again and flicked on the TV to one of my favorite shows. I had experienced paranormal activity before, so I wasn't too alarmed by this thing. I had just moved into the house with my sister after our dad died, and I knew nothing about the place. But after about half an hour into my show, he came back. The black thing. He was taller now. His head almost touched the 8-foot ceiling in my living room. His arms stretched way out till they nearly touched the floor with his long, curling fingers. I saw the outline of his twisting and shifting body. Then I felt the beast on top of me. He clawed at me, and I felt as if the creature was melting into my skin. It felt like his flesh was burning through my skin and entering my body. I begged and I pleaded for help. I prayed to God to save me. Nothing came. Then I felt cold. I felt empty. I felt like I was dead. I thought I was when I closed my eyes. But then I woke up and I was fine. I'm stuck in a beat-up old house with all you guys, with no means of escape, and no idea why I'm here. But I'm fine.
Sam finished his terrifying tale.
Well, that's all well and good, but it still doesn't explain anything. Why are we here? How can we get out of here?
Tom said.
We can't.
Billy said from within the darkness behind Sam.
What the hell do you mean?
Tom asked.
We broke the rules.
Billy said.
The rules of Halloween, like the rhyme said. We all broke the rules.
He finished.
What in God's name are you talking about?
Tom asked Billy.
I broke a kid's pumpkins to relive my youth.
Billy began.
You stole candy from kids.
He said, pointing to Dean.
You didn't give the kids any candy.
He said, referring to Jamie.
And you hate Halloween and took your decorations down. Those are meant to ward off the evil on this night.
Billy finished.
You actually believe that crap?
Tom asked.
No, but I am guessing the guy that put us in here probably does.
Hey, what about Tom?
Sam asked.
Yeah, what did he do?
Jamie followed.
He left candy out. He didn't do anything wrong. So either someone made a mistake, or he put us in here.
Billy revealed.
Well said.
Tom said in a calmer voice, before giving a little chuckle.
I was the trio of portrait-treaters at your door. I was the sad child in the window. I was the scorned father of a child whose candy was stolen. I was the one watching you. I sent your nightmares. I created your fears. You're all here for a reason.
Tom revealed.
Do you remember the rhyme?
He asked. Billy retrieved the piece of yellowed paper from his pocket and began to read it.
Obey the rules of Halloween, for he is ancient and unseen. For he is the Pumpkin Lord, for he comes in many forms. For the worlds are blended on this night. Break the rules and surely die.
It's too late for you.
Tom informed them.
You're already dead! Welcome to your hell!
He said to them before he dropped to his knees. He sprouted long, dark, green vines from his shoulders and sides. Vines like tentacles writhed around him. His face split open and his eyes fell out of their sockets. Blood spewed from him as his face ripped away to reveal a large, bulbous pumpkin head. He had an evil grin carved upon his pumpkin face, and within it there was an eerie yellow glow. He still had small, round eyes within their triangular sockets. They were red and glowing eyes. And within his mouth there were several rows of sharp, pointy teeth, all of them jagged and misshapen. His body grew to an enormous size, and his head nearly touched the tall ceiling of the room. He was a large beast, the Pumpkin Lord. They had all broken the rules of Halloween, and had paid with their lives. And the spirit of Halloween was here to collect.
So, the moral is, as you trick-or-treat this holiday, be aware that the ghouls strolling with you may in fact not be in costume. You just never know who may be watching you on Halloween night. So, obey the rules of Halloween and this murder go-round, and stop by again tomorrow as we continue on this blood trail. Spooky then.